Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Talking about last night's election, all kinds of stuff to discuss. Happy to have with us David Plazas with the Tennessean, the opinion and engagement editor.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. And several calls. So let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Jeff. Hello, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I voted because of Kavanaugh. The Kavanaugh trial was like totally crazy. I'm 55, and you know I voted for the first time. Yeah, since I was like 17, 18. Okay, so my question is, how can the Senate and the House affect the agenda of the president? Democrats have gone crazy.
Where are you calling from? Let me ask, what county are you calling from?
Oh, Rutherford.
Rutherford County? Okay. All right, thank you. 55-year-old says he voted for that one issue. Got him to vote, first time in a long time. And his question is, how can House and Senate impact the agenda of the president? They can do a lot.
Sure. I mean, they can do a lot. At the same time, with a Senate majority and a stronger Senate majority than he had before, the president can still get his nominees before the Senate and likely confirmed. There have been tremendous numbers of judicial confirmations, not just from the Supreme Court level, but also at lower court levels as well. I had the chance to talk to Senator Lamar Alexander a few weeks ago, who talked about some of the bipartisan cooperation pieces that they had, and this was with the Republican House and Congress. Everything from opioid legislation to the Music Modernization Act, which has a big effect here in Nashville because it creates fair pay for songwriters who have digital music. But at the same time, what the House can do, since financial legislation comes out of the House, they can really gum up some of the financial priorities that President Trump has, for example, building the wall, or for example, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. And there are other things too, and that's going to require some careful negotiation. Now, there have been several appropriations bills that were passed in the last few weeks that hadn't been passed in probably over a decade or so. There was a period of time in both the Bush era and the Obama era where there were continuing resolutions being used to essentially fund the government. So this is a big deal, but at the same time, you could still have the threat of closures of government, for example. You could have standoffs. This happened in the 90s when Newt Gingrich was the Republican Speaker of the House versus Democratic President Bill Clinton. And so that's certainly a possibility. One thing that I'm really interested in seeing is who will be Speaker of the House. I mean, right now, the favored person is Nancy Pelosi, who was a favorite enemy of both President Trump and also of Marsha Blackburn. She had mentioned Nancy Pelosi along with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama numerous times in debates and forums when it came to linking them to Phil Bredesen. You know, Jim Cooper, who is the congressman for the 5th District representing Nashville and also Cheatham and Dixon counties, he has voted against Nancy Pelosi in the past. And he has actually gotten...
He voted for Colin Powell one time, I believe. He wrote in Colin Powell's name or something to that. But you're right, he has voted against Nancy Pelosi.
And I've seen a few people say, well, maybe we should vote for him. I think he's received one or a few more votes in the past during these elections, because for the Speaker of the House, everybody in the House votes for this person. And obviously, if you're in the majority, you know, potentially, let's say you have 58 Democrats or so who have said they're not going to support Nancy Pelosi. That's possibly enough for people to make a deal and say, we're going to talk to Republicans and vote for somebody else. So, you know, if Nancy Pelosi can keep her coalition together, she might be successful. On the other hand, she's a very successful fundraiser. And so that's one big advantage as well.
That will be fascinating. She was certainly front and center last night. She delivered a speech. But yes, she has to actually get elected Speaker of the House. Yes. And it will be interesting to see if that happens. I saw the article you're talking about with Lamar Alexander, and he was saying in the midst of the Kavanaugh hearings, we're still getting some things done. Mm-hmm. The Republic, we still work.
Yes.
And there were so many who were so distraught, and he was trying to lay out some examples of how things work. It is interesting. The Republicans, they certainly have gained seats in the Senate, and the seats that they have gained will be more pro-president. There's no doubt. Replacing a Bob Corker with a Marsha Blackburn, she's going to be much more supportive.
Yes.
And many of those that are coming in, certainly the president said in his news conference today, he feels like they owe, to some extent, their seat to him coming in and campaigning for him. So he's going to have a little more power in the Senate. He's not going to have to worry as much about Murkowski and Collins and some of the more independents. He'll have more power there, but certainly it's a step back in the House.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Mitt Romney, who was just elected senator of Utah, will be that conscience, independent voice, much like John McCain was. Certainly in his messaging last night, he talked about being a senator for all the people, regardless of their background, and being an independent voice coming to the White House. And he himself, you may recall, in 2016, was very critical of Donald Trump. And has remained occasionally critical. There was a possibility of him potentially being Secretary of State, but now Mitt Romney can chart his own course. He doesn't have to vote with the president, even though if there's a conservative agenda, this is to quote Senator Alexander, you know, many of these senators want a center-right government, and so they're willing to put up with some of the tweets and so forth. You know, there was a lot of criticism of Senator Flake, who is the outgoing Arizona senator, because he made some strong statements against the president, but still voted for things like the tax cuts and other budget issues.
Yes, very interesting. Let's go to Taylor. Hello, Taylor.
Good evening, gentlemen. It was a very interesting election. I'm going to suggest that Sheriff Hall send his quote or tweet to Democratic Chairman Perez in Washington, D.C., because Tennessee Democratic Party put up the two best candidates in the state for the two offices that they ran for. They were rejected because of national politics, and that's in the Bredesen race, in the Bill Lee race. Bill Lee worked harder than all four of the major candidates put together did, traveled to all 95 counties twice during the campaign, and so and made a strong personal thing, which brought him through more so on personality than party. But he also had the experience to get the job done. I voted for the amendment number 1 because of an OpenLine program where I watched the director of the police union talk about these shooting incidents. What he had to say during that show was scary for anybody that watched it. So he gave.
Wow, so you voted for the Community Oversight Board after hearing from the Fraternal Order Police president on this show.
That's right. And before that, I was more leaning against it than for it. But after watching his presentation and the way he answered some of the questions, I thought we need something much different than what I'm seeing from this particular fellow. So that's my point, and I was glad of the process and proud of this state today.
Well, Taylor, thank you. Thank you very much, Taylor. Thanks for the call.
So Billy talked about the fact that he had traveled with his wife Maria around in an RV, and also Billy also drove a tractor at a certain point during the campaign, during the primaries as well. And the gentleman is correct. He went at least twice to all 95 counties, and actually trying to schedule a meeting with our editorial board, it was difficult because he was in the process of going to all 95 counties. And I've driven the state back and forth a few times, and it's a very long state. It takes a while to get through it, and so it's a really yeoman's effort to do that. Now, Billy, to his credit, I think when he gave his victory speech, talked about really wanting to unite Tennessee. There was toward the end, Carl Dean went a little bit negative. He started calling Billy an extremist, talking about the issues of guns, arming teachers, and other also healthcare issues. And I think that Bill Lee decided to keep it very positive, calling his opponent a good man. And he kept that tone very positive. He congratulated Carl Dean, and he thanked Carl Dean for being a worthy opponent. So it was a far different campaign than the senatorial campaign, which on the one side of the Republican side went very, very negative. Yes,
no doubt about that. I was struck that both of the winners last night spoke before the losing candidate. Usually protocol, I've always seen that they wait as best they can for the loser to go out or for some phone call. But in both cases last night, the winner went out first. But no doubt a difference in tone in that gubernatorial and in the Senate race. I thought it was also interesting what Taylor said He said Democrats put up two best candidates, certainly two of the best candidates Democrats could ever hope for, and they lost because of national politics. Certainly that feels very true with Bredesen, and it speaks to maybe what Darren Hall is saying. The Democratic Party needs to just revamp its message.
And the question is, now that Tennessee is going, the blue parts are going deeper blue, the red parts are going deeper red, do you need a Democratic candidate who is far more partisan? That was a message that Craig Fitzhugh, who had run for the Democratic primary, was trying to make, although he won only about 20% of the vote. But if you look at candidates who are considered on the more leftward spectrum, like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, they easily won re-election in Vermont and Massachusetts, respectively.
There was some pushback, certainly from Democrats, when Bredesen said that he would have supported Kavanaugh.
Yes.
And I saw some people saying on social media that hurt Bredesen. I don't know that the numbers would back that up, but that's an interesting thought. Maybe Democrats put up somebody who's even more far left, and they try and win in those areas where they have those strongholds.
The question was this going to be kind of a campaign where Doug Jones of Alabama won against Roy Moore just the previous year? It's a little bit of a different campaign because Roy Moore was such a controversial candidate. There was a lot of concern about his involvement with young women, and Doug Jones created this very, very positive image. So it was an interesting move. People look for comparisons. It's really hard because every state, every situation is different. But there are some people who argue that had the Democrats had perhaps a firebrand, that might have made a difference. At the same time, the Democrats that were offered in previous elections, whether it's gubernatorial election or senatorial election in 2014, were considered less than competent.
Right. All right, we're going to take a break. Come back. If you're on the line, hold on. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS. Take a break. Be back right after this.